the advice that young people typically receive here is either you've got to choose one thing and that's all you do for the rest of your life. That's the message they hear. Or you can do it
Mm,
all at the same time. And
yeah,
I think both of those are actually inaccurate and
yeah.
unhelpful counsel because I think the reality is you can't do everything at once, but you can do more than you could imagine in a lifetime. This is The Green Writer
With SD Smith.
and Brett Harris.
Brett, it is that time again. I have a wonderful dope quotation for you and for our viewers, listeners, and uh
Fans.
yes, I was trying to think of a different dimension of, how like people couldn't have maybe anticipated AI or augmented reality or that kind of a thing like in the future. So I'm trying to think of ways that this podcast, this show would be timeless. And I don't really know if there's something else we need to cover as far as listeners, viewers. What's another way? What are the other smellers? It's possible people should be taking in things like this through the olfactory sense.
That's as good a guess I think as we're going to have. So
I mean, have you heard that you mentioned before we got on air, we weren't on the air earlier before we were off the air. It was hard to breathe, but you mentioned that sentences. What did you say about sentences? This is interesting, I think.
there's a surprising percentage of sentences that have never been spoken before.
Hmm. What do you think the chances of this show might be enjoyed through the olfactory sense? What do you think of the chances of that sentence having been
I'd say
said
that's
before?
that's pretty high, but not as high as the sentence you said before we were on air, which was "I'm going to ding you for your Tods."
I'm gonna
I
ding you
don't think has
for
ever been
Todd's.
said before. I'm sure,
Yeah.
pretty certain has
And we
never
can
been
explain
said
that.
before.
That sounds weird, but the Todds, as hopefully faithful viewers, listeners, smellers of this show will know, the Todds is the topic of distortion.
Discussion,
Discussion.
discussion. Oh my goodness.
Today's discussion, I think, is what just okay. Yeah, well, I'm not dinging you for your Todds right now, but I am going to share a wonderful dope quotation from Seneca the Younger, and which makes me think about. I always wonder if when you hear Seneca, sometimes he's just Seneca, sometimes he's Seneca the Younger. When he's listed just as Seneca, do you think Seneca the Elder is like, dude, that's the Younger? And do you think he feels like this is my little brother who like achieved so much? And I think about a lot of rivalry in the Seneca home.
Yeah, I think that's internalized strife from your own family of origin.
That could be, and I wonder if they have, like if they commiserate with the Pliny family, with the Pliny the Younger, Seneca the Younger getting together, commiserating, or maybe they're celebrating how celebrated they are. Anyway, we'll get to the quotation, and this is good. I think I want to hear your reaction. Okay, Seneca the Younger says, "It is not that we have a short time to live," and this is a contrast to the whole like what we hear all the time: life is short. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements, if it were if it were all well invested. And he wrote a whole book about this, but here's the little short takeaway that we can maybe bounce back and forth, and that is life is long if you know how to use it. Seneca the Younger, life is long if you know how to use it.
Mm.
Brett Harris, how does that make you feel in your guts?
It makes me feel really good and warm throughout my body, actually. And it reminds me of something my dad used to tell us, which was, you know, you have enough time to do all the things God is calling you to do and no time to waste.
Hmm. Wow, that's good. Does he speak in basically like dope quotations all the
Yes.
time? All
Yes,
the time?
basically. In fact, the next season of this show is just all gonna be
It's
my
all
dad's quotations.
well, we could maybe mix in some of my dad's a famous for maxims. I was on a walk with my daughter yesterday, and I was sharing several of my father's maxims, which I don't know how many of them are truly original. That's why I say maxims are kind of collected sayings. But hey, Solomon did some of that too. He came up with a bunch of stuff, but he also collected. So my dad is probably the wise. I don't know. I think we we could get into a "Can my dad beat up your dad" fight.
Yeah, yeah, I think we'll have to debate that, but yeah, what's your reaction to my dad's quotation, in response to, Seneca's quotation?
So we got a strong trail, a chain of title here with this thought. I I I I love it. I think it's true in so many ways. Like I think that it's interesting to think about the we're always saying, and I don't know, as a parent, you know, my son is now, you know, took his first solo drive yesterday, and he's uh and you know, I've got 2 adult children and stuff, so it does feel I'm having that feeling of like life is short, you know, and that sort of a thing and I see younger families at church with a little kid, and I'm tempted to say the same thing that people said to Gene and I, which is like they grow up fast and that kind of thing, and which feels true, and it is true in so many senses. But on the other hand, there is so much time, and barring life being cut short by tragedy, which does happen, it's we are given quite a bit of time, and I think we it is all about investment, right? It is all about what we do with the time that we have, and if we um there is I buy the line of like there is time to do the things you're called to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that one of the lines from Seneca, that Seneca the Younger, that I think was really, um, insightful, was the comment that we waste a lot of time. And I think we live in a culture that does waste a lot of time, and I don't wanna get too specific and like, this is a time waster or that's a time waster, because it depends. I mean, you know, people have often used video games as an example. If you're playing video games, you're wasting time, but then you can have a whole career, you know, in the video game industry, and there's storytelling in the video game industry, and there's, you know, great, ways to connect with other people through video games. So I don't want to be too like stereotypical here and like what's wasting time for a certain person, but we do waste time, and I think we waste time because we spend a lot of time not being productive, but also not doing anything that's truly restful and refreshing. And so we've talked in previous episodes about learning how to rest well and learning how to do those activities that actually refresh us so we can return to our work, with new energy and creativity, versus, you know, I think a lot of the okay, I'm gonna point out one thing. I think a lot of the scrolling on the phone, on social media, you know, has been studied to be very detrimental, especially detrimental to young people, but probably to all of us. You know, it's not actually a refreshing thing to do. It's something we do as a break, but then it doesn't recharge us. And so, you know, something like that might be the best specific example I could give of how we could waste time and then we're not refreshed. And when we're using our time in that way, we're not going to be able to do all the things we might want to do. But if we can be wise with our time, there's so much space. There's so much time. I remember growing up, my people would ask my family, how do we, you know, do all the things we're doing? What, you know, writing books, you know, put it on conferences, you know, starting a church like my parents did, and my dad would always say, well, you know, we don't have a television, which was a choice that my parents made early on in our family's history. You know, we don't own a television. And so we get so bored that we go out and do things, right? So I think that there's some truth in that. Like if we don't fill our time with draining rest, you know, non-restful,
Yeah.
non-productive activities, there's a lot of time really to do a lot of cool things in your life.
Mm. I my wife told me yesterday, and I didn't believe this. You know how have you seen there's comments that's like if you save a penny a day, you know, surprisingly in 3 months you'll have $10 million or something. You know, there's like this, and some of them are, you know, accurate, but I've fallen for a few of these because my math is so bad where I'm like, you know, in this amount of time, if you just because you double this and like, well,
I think you have to double the penny,
yeah,
the amount of pennies every day. If you just get one every day, I don't think it's
yeah,
gonna
you have
be.
like you have like 30 cents or whatever. But, no, what she did, she told me this. She said, if, you know, often now we're spending hours on our phones. So, hours a day, many, many hours. So she said, if you reduce an hour off of your phone time every day for a year, take a guess at how much time that takes off of your how much time that adds up to,
I mean, I'm gonna take a wild guess that an hour a day for a year would be 365 hours,
which is how many days?
365 days.
No, it's 365 hours, but that translates into 15 days.
Oh, how many days?
I'm
I have to
sorry, yeah, I did
divide the
say time.
365 by 24.
Yeah, get your
That's maybe a
calculators
little
out.
bit too much for me at this
No,
time of day.
no, this is public math, and we shouldn't do public math. But I was surprised because she said if you took an hour off of phone time every day, if we do that, it amounts to 15 days that you save, that you have at your disposal for the year. And I was like, that's when she said that, I was like, that's not right. That's one of those pennies turned into millions of dollars thing. But then I did the math, and that's true. So 15
In
days.
15 days, I'm guessing is 24-hour days. A lot of that you're gonna hopefully be sleeping, you're gonna be sleeping for a good chunk of that. So if you actually probably expand that out to how many waking hours, that's it's probably like 30 days or whole extra month of time,
But now you're
you know.
blowing my mind. We're
So
we're in the different level here. But the point is, there are a lot of time. There's a lot of time, and I think that it is about how we choose to invest it. And it's the same thing as if we were saving all those pennies and becoming millionaires. If you it's not so much what you have, but what you do with what you have. In many ways, we can't control, whether or not we are going to live a relatively short life or a really long life, and it's something that God's given us. And it's like, what are we going to do with what we have? And I think for a lot of us, for me, that was a real big turning point. From instead of turning from the kind of person who says I would like to be a writer to a person who says I've written a book, written a novel. Like that was a big deal to me on my journey. And it was a lot about like, I am going to choose to do this instead of, I've got a young family, I've got whatever, got a lot of challenges that I could list as excuses, but I am going to set aside this and I'm going to do this instead.
yeah,
And it was about investment. I'm grateful for that investment, but it took me a long time
yeah.
to get there.
And probably if you hadn't been writing your first novel, you might have been spending an extra hour, on a screen doing something else, and
Yeah.
then you wouldn't have had anything to show for it. And yet that invested time into that first novel has turned into a whole career for you as an author.
I
So
could have. We didn't have cell phones back then, but I could have been watching Strong Bad, Homestar Runner videos on YouTube. That would
that's
have
what I
been.
was going to guess you'd be doing. So
Actually, it wasn't even on YouTube. I don't know if YouTube was out then, but it was, Homestar Runners is a, classic for the kids out there, to maybe discover at some point. Not bad. I would love you to ding me with the Todds.
all
Uh,
right, I'm going to ding you with a Todd here. So kind of flowing out of this discussion with Seneca the Younger and this idea that we we have a lot of time. Life isn't actually as short as we think. I want to bring it home to this question that I hear a lot from young people and young writers in particular, which is this tension over I want to pursue writing, but I also love this other thing and this other thing and this other thing. And there's this paralysis of feeling like I have to choose. I have to pick the path that I'm going to go on for the rest of my life, and by choosing that one thing, I'm choosing against every other thing. And I don't know if have you heard or interacted with young people who've kind of wrestled with that feeling?
I've wrestled that myself for sure, and you're not talking about choosing between scrolling, some kind of social media thing versus, you're talking about like I'm very passionate about,
Yeah, music
politics.
and writing
Yeah,
and yeah.
I want to see some kind of change in the world, or
Mhm.
I feel like maybe I should be a youth pastor, or I should do something this other important, or I love the law, or I love medicine, or I love veterinary, medicine and stuff. I would love to, yeah, and you feel conflicted about now, but I'm 15 years old, and if I don't decide, and yeah, I think it's a part of it is this, really specialized age we live in, and maybe we've always, we've literally had names that come from, I'm a Carter, I'm a Brewer, I'm a Smith, I'm doing this job in life, and I think that there's a healthy sense of, calling, and I think we're gonna talk about that at some point, but there's a healthy sense of vocation of like what I'm called to do, and I get that, and I appreciate that, and the way we talk about that would often lead somebody to say like, well, that's a really important thing, and I need to take that extremely seriously. And yeah, so I do see that. But the immediate thing I thought of when I was listing off vocations that you could be like, ah, should I be a writer? Or, I got to go all in with be a writer, or but I really want to be a veterinarian, like this choice. Well, I don't know what to do. Like, may, maybe, have you heard of James Harriet? Like James Harriet did both. And a lot of
All
people
Creatures
do
Great and
both.
Small.
Yeah.
Love that show. Haven't read read some of the books.
Yeah.
Love those as
It's
well. So,
huge in in our family, but yeah, it's a
yeah.
great example of like, hey, maybe the way is both.
Yeah. And here's what I typically tell young people, because I think that the advice that young people typically receive here is either you've got to choose one thing and that's all you do for the rest of your life, that's the message they hear, or you can do it
Mm,
all at the same time.
yeah,
I think both of those are actually inaccurate and
yeah,
unhelpful counsel, because I think the reality is you can't do everything at once, but you can do more than you could imagine in a lifetime.
mm.
And so I look at people, yeah,
Hey,
like
give me that again. Give me that again.
okay,
That's a good one. That might end up on somebody's dope quotations someday. I'm just
so
saying.
you can't do everything at once, but you can do more than you imagine in a lifetime. And
Brett the Younger.
Brett the Younger,
Are you
yeah,
younger than your twin brother, or are you
I'm
older?
20 minutes younger. Yes,
Okay,
yeah, I
then
am.
you're
I am the
Brett the
younger.
Younger. Okay, Brett the
So
Younger.
the why I think that's such an important truth for our listeners, our viewers, and our smellers is is because is because it's true that you have to focus on something, especially as you're trying to get a career off the ground. You're a young person, you're heading into kind of that season of life where you need to pursue some sort of vocation or calling. You're going to have to give some real emphasis to get the momentum you need to get something off the ground. And that's okay. That's good. But what you need to remember is that's not forever. And if you can get something off the ground and establish yourself as an adult with a career, and you can do, well for yourself by doing good for others, then you're going to be in a position to then do other things too. And so I think of someone like, Andrew Peterson, who we both love. I'm sure our listeners, I mean, a little Sam sort of likes him. You know, our listeners
He's
love the
great.
Wing Feather Saga.
He's wonderful. He's fantastic.
And you look at his life, because
Yeah.
he loved music, he loved writing,
Mhm.
and he was able to get his music career off the ground. I mean, if he, I ask you, like, if he had tried to both like launch his writing career and his music career simultaneously, that probably wouldn't have worked. Like, he probably
Yeah.
couldn't have gotten enough momentum on either of those airplanes for them to
Yeah.
get off the runway. He was able to focus on his music, get that off the runway up into the air, had people who loved his work and were blessed by his music. And then he was able to pivot to starting to write novels, wrote the Wing Feather Saga. Now he's written nonfiction. Now he has he's a producer for a TV show. He loves, he loves all sorts of other things too. He loves trees, he loves gardening, he loves, taking care of bees, right? Like, he's being able to do all of these different things. And I don't know him well enough to know all the things he's probably doing, but over the course of his lifetime, which is, still, he's still, Lord willing, and has many years with us, he's doing a lot of different things, and but he didn't do it all at the same time. And
Yeah.
I think that's the takeaway, which is you do have to probably pick something. You do
Mm.
probably have to put some emphasis on something, but just know that every calling, every passion that God has put on your heart, there probably is going to be an opportunity for that to come back around and to become a part of your life, like a James Harriet,
Yeah.
being a veterinarian and then also writing these great stories inspired by his
Yeah.
career as a veterinarian. And so, yeah, just having that hopefulness that your
Mm.
life could be full and it could be rich. And yes, like Seneca the Younger told us, you're not going to be able to just waste a bunch of that time. If you waste a bunch of that time, maybe there won't be enough time for everything. But if you are focused, and if you are wise in the use of and stewardship of your time, like, it's amazing how many things you can do in a
Mm.
lifetime.
I think that's great. That's a really, really good advice. I would love to have heard that at a younger age. But I think of, like, you think about John Grisham or other, like, John Grisham would not have been capable of writing the kind of hits that he wrote. I've never read a John Grisham book. I've seen some of the movies, but very prolific and excellent. He was a lawyer for many years, and that's he's his skill in one actually. So I think it's not just about there's time. There's also crossover, and there's so much, like, two things can kind of meld into one. I'm reading some books about, written also by a lawyer, but who loved history, and he's writing about a lawyer in the Tudor period, and these are fascinating stories. And but these sort of, like, the different vocations, the different callings, the different experiences that we have in life can often, it's like when you're writing a story, often it takes, like, a couple of good ideas. Like, it's not just maybe one good idea, and this is an Orson Scott Card thought, but sometimes it's one, two, or three that seem like they're different, but then you figure out a way that, this idea for a heist over here, and this idea for a spaceship story, actually, if we combine them, some kind of really cool would happen. So that happens sometimes just within, brainstorming about stories. But if you think about a life, like, there's some magic that happens when, Michael Crichton was more than just a writer, and so many people are. And I think you're talking, sometime we should talk about maybe Cal Newport's work in the book Deep Work, and how important it is to devote time. And I think we do need to take the vocation of a storyteller seriously enough to devote energy to it, and to, get training, and to learn, and to grow in that. I think that's really important. So we're not saying don't do that. What you're saying is there's still time to do other things, and it's not, and writing, learning the skill of writing, entrepreneurship, that sort of stuff, whatever the things that a career in writing or pursuing that, what they elicit, what you grow, the kind of ways you grow in that will also prepare you for doing other kinds of work, other kinds of business, other kinds of vocation. So I think that the message of, like, it's not wasted, and there is time to do more. Well, good endeavors are not a waste of time,
Mhm.
and they have, their applicability is vast. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm with you. I'm with your dad. I'm with Seneca. I think life is long if you know how to use it, and I think that's inspiring and hopeful. And I keep coming back to this for thinking about our smellers, our viewers, our listeners, and what we want to give them. And I think if we I want them to feel, I want you to feel hopeful. I want you to feel encouraged. I want you to smile and rest a little bit, and rest and feel joy. And I know you might be in a stage of life where you feel impatient, or you feel like, or burdened. Burdens are going to be there, this or that, and that's, but it's exciting. Like, your life is not over, and many writers get going at a very late age in life. So, I mean, if you're starting at a young age, I mean, you're starting way earlier than I did. And I think that's super exciting. There's so much for you, so much ahead of you. And so I'm excited about the project that your life, more than just your writing, of your life.
Mm, mm. Yeah. Amen to all that. And I think we should let me close this with prayer. But I just love all of that. And Lord, I thank you for this time. I thank you for this conversation. Thank you for everyone who is watching, listening, smelling, feeling, uh, tasting this show right now. And we just thank you for the fact that you have given us a lot of time to live and to do a lot of special things that you've put on our hearts to do. And I just ask that everyone who's listening would be able to, yeah, rest in the fact that they have time. They don't have to do it all at once, but that in a lifetime they can do so many different things, and that it's never too late to dive into a passion that God's put in your heart. And it's never, it's you just get to enjoy this process. You get to enjoy growing and learning, and success in one area gets to open doors for you to step into another area that you are excited about. And so I ask that you would bring that message home, that would be a relief and a source of joy for our audience. And we just thank you for each of them. We pray your blessing on their lives, and we can't wait to see all the amazing things they do in this life. And we can't wait to hear all about it. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of The Green Writer.
Thanks for listening.
Now would be a good time to subscribe so you don't miss a new episode.
And then share this episode with a friend.
We believe in you,
and we're on your side.